serving up something special. Where on-stage variety turns to backstage disaster.
Can I help you?
Anyway.
A sparkling new comedy with 3 times the entertainment and double the trouble.
This is a good bit. This is where we come on.
The television debut of 3 Men and a Baby Grand, 9:30 Monday.
Tonight at 7:30, the Queensland Government, the shredded documents and the whistleblower who says he can't get justice. Plus, Arthur Tunstall's last stand and, coming soon to a shop near you, alcoholic lemonade. Tonight, 7:30.
Life in the 60s, that's how it used to be. But since then, profound changes have occurred at home and at work. Now we're living in the 90s, an exciting new series introduced by Monica Trapiger.
It's about who we are and who we want to be.
Our changing expectations.
I couldn't cope with the infidelities anymore.
Changing roles and responsibilities.
Hi Gary, take you in as my partner in Holy Union.
Now we're living in the 90s. Starts 8 o'clock tonight.
You assaulted someone and you used a weapon. It's dreadful conduct. It frightens people.
A powerful new drama series.
2 members down, repeat, we had 2 members down.
From the creators of Phoenix.
You made this up, didn't you?
Recreating all the conflict, tragedy and humour of the court.
I'm not going to be railroaded!
Capturing the lives and trials of the people who move through them.
I was the scum of the earth once, but I'm not now.
Janus. Premieres 8:30 tonight.
Tonight, peace descends on Ulster as the IRA lays down its weapons. A new job for controversial games boss Arthur Tunstall, and Queenslanders to pay more to flush away the state's waste. Good evening, Rod Young with ABC News. The IRA has silenced its guns after 25 years of armed revolt against British rule. The ceasefire declaration has sparked conflicting emotions. On one side, joy and hope. On the other, fear and deep suspicion. Protestant leaders complain the IRA statement doesn't include the key word permanent, and Britain is demanding clarification. From the ABC's London Bureau, Neil Ross reports.
In Republican West Belfast, a triumphant welcome for the IRA ceasefire. There's no thought of surrender here, it's more of a victory parade. Sinn Féin leader Gerry Adams is feted as a conquering hero, and he's already started to set out his terms.
We have waited for too long for our freedom. We are demanding of Mr. Major's government that he takes decisive steps now to move the situation forward in a fundamental way. It means a demilitarisation of the situation. It means our prisoners home from England are home.
Earlier, in its historic statement, the IRA said it had instructed all units that from midnight there will be a complete cessation of military operations. There were no time limits, no conditions. But unionist leaders immediately asked why the word permanent was missing.
Permanent means that it is forever. Complete means only for the time in which that particular situation is accepted.
Seeking reassurance, they met Prime Minister Major at number 10. He had already given the IRA ceasefire a cautious welcome. But in later interviews, he insisted the matter be cleared up.
May be that their statement does mean that this is permanent. It may well be that that is what they mean by it. What I am saying is that that isn't what they have actually said. I hope they will make it clear that it is permanent.
Dublin's welcome was noticeably warmer, with Prime Minister Albert Reynolds calling the ceasefire unequivocal.
I said at all times, I don't mind what words you use as long as the effect is that this is the end of the 25 years of armed conflict.
In the wake of the IRA announcement, debate here has been dominated by 2 words, complete versus permanent. Basically, has the violence ended for good or not? It is crucial, but others say this misses the scale of what the IRA is trying to do. They say, colloquially, it's like rejecting a pint of Guinness because it's only 98% full.
When I read the statement, I saw it as permanent in that it said that they were announcing a complete cessation of their activities. Complete cessation. There's two words there, you know.
The squabbling has overshadowed the issues that are still waiting to be addressed. Will the British government's broadcasting ban on the IRA now be lifted? Will Britain's billion-dollar-a-year troop presence in Northern Ireland be reduced? And when will the IRA's so-called prisoners of war be released? Also to be answered, will there now be a loyalist backlash? Protestant gunmen have already said they will not be dancing to the tune of the pan-nationalists. It's all still to be decided. The struggle for Northern Ireland may no longer be armed, but it does continue.
If peace is to have a chance in Northern Ireland, both sides will have to put aside generations of hatred and mistrust. There have been ceasefires before, but none has lasted for more than a few months. As they contemplate a long and bitter history, Protestants and Catholics have differing views on this latest bid to put away the guns.
In the pubs and on the streets of Northern Ireland, opinion of the ceasefire divides along sectarian lines. Protestant unionists sense a sellout by Downing Street.
Don't declare peace unless they have got something in return. And I believe that the British government have done deals behind bags.
Catholic Republicans, Ulster's minority, dare to hope that political dialogue will now replace tit-for-tat killings.
I've lost 2 sons, but I now have 4 grandsons, and I would like to see a future for them.
No one, however, is starry-eyed about the prospects for peace. History doesn't allow that luxury. The 25-year undeclared war, known locally as the Troubles, has claimed more than 3,000 lives. It began with the civil rights protests of the 60s, as Catholics pressed for better housing and jobs. Protestants fought back to preserve their privileges. British troops were sent to keep the peace in 1969. At first, they were greeted as protectors of the Catholic minority. 3 years on, though, 13 died when British troops opened fire on protesters on Londonderry's Bloody Sunday. The IRA stepped up its activities, fighting the Republican cause with bomb and bullet. In the 70s, 3 ceasefires came and went, none lasting more than 3 months. The terror and indiscriminate killing continued, reaching into Britain itself. IRA bombs hit Harrods department store in London and came dangerously close to Margaret Thatcher herself at a Brighton hotel in 1984. Often there were ghastly mistakes and innocent lives were lost. The Enniskillen bomb killed 11 at a Remembrance Day ceremony. 2 Australian lawyers, mistaken for British officers, were gunned down in the Dutch town of Roermond. Retribution could be swift and unforgiving. 3 IRA operatives were shot dead by British agents in Gibraltar. At their funeral in Belfast, a Protestant gunman fatally shot 3 mourners. No one in Northern Ireland forgets. The question now is, can they forgive? Or will future generations continue to fight the battles of their forefathers?
Outspoken Games official Arthur Tunstall returned to Australia this morning to confront his detractors. In defiant mood, he said he wouldn't be quitting, and the Commonwealth Games Association has confirmed he won't be sacked. But Mr Tunstall won't be in charge of a Games team again because he has a new job.
To deal with all the media inquiries, the Games Association called a press conference.
Look at the crest I've got here today. You think I was the Prime Minister of Australia, for God's sake.
There was no apology on the issue of disabled athletes.
You don't find them in the Olympics, do you? And I want to see a special disabled Commonwealth Games for these people.
And on the Cathy Freeman incident, Ray Godkin says Mr Tunstall took action after a senior Games official in Canada complained, along with a federal politician.
It come from Australia. It come from a politician in Australia. That's where it started.
You should have carried the Australian flag first up and not seen the Aboriginal flag at all. Now, I don't want to say any more about it. Surely I've made it very clear to you.
Arthur Tunstall also made it clear that he won't be resigning as Secretary-General of the Games Association.
I love sport. It's been my life.
On the elected job of chef de mission of a Games team, his president stepped in.
I think that he wouldn't stand because of that, and also that possibly because of all that's happened, maybe he wouldn't be elected in that position.
There is another reason why Mr Tunstall won't have the same job in 4 years' time. Earlier this week, he was elected to a new post by sports administrators from various countries. He's now the Senior Vice President of the Commonwealth Games Federation, a job that won't allow him to be in charge of a Games team. His Australian job as Secretary-General is up for re-election next year.
There was embarrassment for both Alexander Downer and Paul Keating today as they intensified their row over the opposition leader's address to a meeting of the League of Rights. Mr Downer admitted his attendance at the 1987 gathering had been a mistake, but the Prime Minister was forced to disown one of his own backbenchers and the ALP leader in Western Australia. Political correspondent Jim Middleton.
After ducking the issue in Parliament 24 hours ago, Alexander Downer this afternoon owned up to his 1987 error of judgment.
You can make the charge that I went to this meeting to talk about the Constitution and some people from the League of Rights were there and it was a front for the League of Rights. Well, that's fair enough.
What helped the opposition leader pluck up his courage was this statement from maverick Labor MP Graham Campbell, who's also addressed a League of Rights gathering.
The League of Rights is a very ordinary little organisation. It has nothing like the power or the influence of the Zionists.
That, plus the news that West Australian Labor leader Ian Taylor just this week invited a League of Rights group to a meeting. Those revelations forced disclaimers from Paul Keating.
If the leader of the opposition in Western Australia meets the League of Rights, he would be as foolish as the leader of the opposition was when he met them.
And by raising the temperature of the row yesterday, the Prime Minister was forced into something of a concession about Mr Downer today.
I do not believe he's an anti-Semite, but I do believe he knowingly went to a meeting run
the Honourable Member for
by
Flinders.
notorious anti-Semites.
The opposition leader also had the chance to hurl some invective at his rival.
And one of the more shameful events of Australian political history.
But by opening up the issue, Mr Downer also suffered more collateral damage, not just his belated admission of error, but also another dose of ridicule from the Prime Minister.
He is the most foolish political leader of this country since Billy McMahon.
It was that sort of day, one where the passions of politicians on both sides of the fence got the better of them. Parliament, as is sometimes said of sport, was the loser.
Queenslanders could soon be paying more to flush their toilets. Councils have warned state government pressure to upgrade their sewage treatment plants means rates will rise. All of Queensland's sewage treatment plants have been told to clean up their act as part of a government crackdown on pollution.
The recent statewide investigation found none of Queensland's treatment plants complied with all of the conditions of their licences. Caught in the operation, a number of tourist resorts and industries. While there's no evidence of widespread discharges, there has been some pollution of Queensland's waterways.
There are no health problems at the moment. There are no threats. We're trying to avoid them.
Molly Robson concedes her department's standards may be too high, but has still told nearly 200 treatment plants, most run by councils, to clean up their act. And Queensland sewage systems will come under more pressure from a booming population, with most plants requiring upgrading to cope with the demand.
We shouldn't be waiting till the events happen. We should actually be planning ahead.
The state government estimates that upgrade will cost more than $500 million, and councils say there's no way they could afford that expense all in one hit.
Rate increases would go through the roof.
They say they'll need 5 to 10 years to upgrade to tertiary standard treatment and the help of state and federal governments and the private sector. Even then, ratepayers could be slugged more for sewage disposal.
Councils are very committed to ensuring that we look after our waterways. We're not about polluting the waterways.
The Environment Minister says she'll prosecute those who refuse to comply, but first the government will have to put its own house in order. 4 of its own treatment plants are unsatisfactory.
Queensland will consider new laws to make mining company executives responsible for safety in the wake of the Mara mine disaster. A mine safety conference on Queensland's Central Coast has been told underground mining injuries cost the industry more than $17 million a year. But union officials are sceptical about the effectiveness of the proposed legislation.
Less than 3 weeks ago, Mara was rocked by an explosion that buried 11 miners underground. Mara still mourns, but mining unions say that when it comes to safety, the coal industry has a very short memory.
My experience is that it doesn't shake the industry up for very, very long, and it grabs the hearts of the nation and the politicians for a relatively short period of time as well, but it goes away.
By mid-next year, Queensland is expected to introduce new laws making mining company executives personally liable for accidents. That legislation would bring Queensland into line with other states.
We're not necessarily motivated by the threat of
personal liability. We think it's a part of our professional responsibility. It's something we want to do anyway.
But the union says new laws aren't the answer. In other states and overseas, company directors have avoided prosecution. The current Coal Mining Act already makes mine managers responsible for injuries and deaths.
Well, the new legislation may well be that nice, warm and fuzzy stuff, but without enforcement, and you won't get enforcement without political will, then nothing will occur.
The union says mining companies need to put safety first and increase consultation between the boardroom and the coalface. The state government agrees.
It's the people who are actually operating the machinery or working at the face, doing that on a day-in, day-out basis, who often have the best understanding of just what the problems are and have the most fruitful ideas as to how they can be managed.
Authorities will begin investigating the Mara mine disaster next month.
Queensland's corruption watchdog, the Criminal Justice Commission, says reforming the state's police service is taking too long. A report released in Parliament today says the majority of the work aimed at eliminating corruption is now complete, but the CJC says more should be done to extend the long arm of the law further on the streets.
Tony Fitzgerald recommended sweeping changes to eliminate corruption and instil more professionalism into Queensland's police service. The CJC has just completed a wide-ranging review of those changes and their effectiveness. Commission head Rob O'Regan says the police service has been through a painful period of adjustment and has come a long way in 5 years.
I have no doubt that the Commissioner and his senior officers are committed to significant reform.
But the report says there's still some way to go before merit-based promotion, community policing and more professional management are fully implemented.
Certainly the report says the balance isn't there yet and there's still probably an over-reliance upon hierarchy.
Police Minister Paul Brady and Commissioner Jim O'Sullivan are pleased with the report.
The police service in Queensland is considerably more open, accountable and professional than it was 5 years ago.
The Police Commissioner says there's strong support for change.
You will have people who are disgruntled from time to time in any organisation, but by and large I think morale is as high as it's ever been.
The police union says all the hard work's been worthwhile.
We are professional, corruption-free and far more ethical and open than we were, and they're the sort of things that we've all been working toward.
The CJC has one more report to present to the government on the police service. It'll cover discipline and complaint handling procedures.
Queensland Police are still searching for a convicted murderer who's escaped from the Brisbane Community Correction Centre. The day release of Alan Michelot has touched off a row between the Corrective Services Minister and the state opposition.
Alan Michelot, who's 31, has spent the past 13 years in prison for murder and was shortly due for release on parole. He was serving the end of his sentence at the Community Correction Centre at Dutton Park and had been given special leave for a day. Michelot failed to return to the centre late yesterday, the second time this year he's absconded. And that sparked a heated political row.
There was no escape. He wasn't in a secure custody. He was on leave of absence.
Liberal leader Joan Sheldon says it's unthinkable. A prisoner with a record of violence and escape was in a position to flee.
This man obviously shouldn't be on the streets at all, let alone on work release, and certainly not absconded yet again. I mean, the whole prison system, as I see it, is a farce.
Prison authorities say Michelot's parole will now almost certainly be delayed.
2 men have been charged over the murder of a Bundaberg man early this week. Christopher Dunley's body was found riddled with bullet holes on a farm at Booyal near Bundaberg on Sunday. Shots were also fired at his 23-year-old girlfriend. Today, Rodney William Bouchard of Booyal and Gregory de Jong of Appletree Creek appeared in Maryborough Court charged with murder and attempted murder. They've been remanded in custody until further court appearances. Across Australia today, conservationists rallied, hoping to persuade the government to end woodchipping by revoking all export licences. But the national campaign has outraged Resources Minister David Beddle, whose office and home were vandalised.
The anti-woodchipping graffiti appeared outside Mr Beddle's home and office overnight.
The issue that really angered me was the invasion of my privacy. Not so much mine, but my wife's when she's home alone.
The graffiti coincided with a nationwide series of protests calling on the government to stop woodchipping.
In Australia, where we have destroyed 2/3 of our forests and woodlands, and that includes 3/4 of our rainforests, we just should have stopped logging native forest long ago.
They say Australia's old growth forests are being turned into wood chips, with Australia exporting 6 million tonnes a year. Environment groups say Australia is one of the most arid countries in the world, and it needs its forests to maintain clean water and air. The forest industry says wood chipping is a valuable resource to the Australian economy, worth between $400 and $500 million annually. It says if low-grade trees weren't turned into wood chips, they'd be left to rot on the forest floor.
The best practice is being conducted right across our forests. We've had 6 inquiries which have shown that.
Environmentalists have questioned Australia's international credibility.
It's all very well for the Prime Minister to talk about forests being devastated in the Pacific, but let's also talk about the devastation of forests right here in Australia.
I don't accept that, and I've argued strongly with the environmentalists that we do have good forest practices.
The Green activists are urging Australians to write to the government to show their concern.
The Brisbane City Council has dismantled an illegal campsite on the edge of the city's central business district. Not long after sunrise, council health officers and Aboriginal community leaders moved in to persuade the 20 or so squatters to leave. A handful of police were on standby in case of trouble but weren't needed. The squatters, mostly from Aboriginal settlements in southeast Queensland, helped pack up the camp that had been home for months. The council said it had health concerns as the park has no running water or toilet block. Some squatters decided to make their own arrangements for sleeping quarters tonight. Others took up an offer of temporary hostel accommodation on Brisbane's south side. Aboriginal community leaders say they're working to find permanent places for the park dwellers to live. Australia's sugar industry is going through a golden period. Producers can't keep up with consumer demand, forcing up the world price for sugar. But the drought has caught some growers forced to look on in envy as their colleagues net record returns.
Australia's cane growers are enjoying the sweet taste of success. This year's crop has broken all records and will net Australia $1.8 billion, outstripping the wheat industry for the first time. With world demand for sugar exceeding supply, the immediate future looks rosy.
Thailand and some of our major competitors have had difficulties in production. Cuba has gone backwards and is unlikely to recover. And that's really allowed Australia to come in and capture with its superior quality, and we do have superior quality sugar.
The confidence boost in the industry is having an economic impact in towns and cities from northern New South Wales to far north Queensland. Dozens of new harvesters valued at almost $500,000 are selling faster than luxury cars, and new land is being opened up for planting. But in isolated pockets of the state, drought is crushing cane producers. Just south of Ingham in North Queensland, entire fields of cane have withered.
Cane's just died out. It's got no juice in it at all. Some blokes have even had cane condemned by the mill.
Others have failed to mature and are almost not worth harvesting. If rain doesn't fall soon in this area, next year's crop will also be in jeopardy.
If that's the case, we have to go out and look for work just to survive.
Ironically, growers less than 20 kilometres away are praying for clear skies until their crops are cut and at the mill.
In finance news, resource stocks led the fall on the share market today, some major profit results failing to impress the market. The All Ordinaries shed 16.5 points, a weaker than expected result. Overseas, the Tokyo and Hong Kong markets lacked inspiration, in line with the Dow's overnight performance. And the dollar was marginally up against the greenback, lower against the yen. In sport, the Australian cricket team was given a $425,000 bonus before flying out today for a 3-test series against Pakistan. But with a long, tough summer ahead, the players will earn every cent. As well as Pakistan, the Australians are facing test series against England and the West Indies.
The Australian Cricket Board will provide a bonus of $75,000 for a series victory. That's on top of the normal $15,000 for a test win. In addition, there's an extra $100,000 for winning all 3 series.
Fantastic. I think I'll speak for everyone there. Obviously, we're going over there to win. We try to win every test match we play in, but you know, it's nice to have a little pot of gold into the rainbow as well.
After 16 years with Alan Border as sheet anchor, the Pakistan series is a tough initiation for Taylor as captain. In 1987, Mike Gatting ultimately lost the England captaincy after a bitter clash with the local umpire. And in 1988, the Australians threatened to go home after a series of disputed decisions.
We have discussed it, very, very briefly though. There was problems in 88, but that was 88, this is 94. We're looking forward to this tour from a brand new perspective.
Pace bowlers can face a heartbreak tour of Pakistan. For Joe Angel, Damien Fleming and Glenn McGrath, it'll be vital they get their swing action working quickly. The Australians play a one-day series in Sri Lanka before reaching Pakistan. The first test in Karachi starts on September 28.
In a shock move, one of rugby league's newcomers, the Queensland Crushers, have sacked coach Bill Gardner. He's been replaced by former Australian Test forward Bob Lindner. Lindner was originally signed as a player, but will now concentrate solely on the coaching duties.
The announcement of Bob Lindner as the coach for the Queensland Crushers comes just a month before the team starts preparing for its inaugural season in the New South Wales competition. Despite being coached by Bill Gardner in the Brisbane League, the Crushers management admitted today that Lindner was always considered as a possible replacement.
We had discussions in relation to Bob coaching, and I believe that Bob's future is in that area because, as I said initially, from day one it would only be a one-year playing contract if that was if he was going to play.
Lindner arrived back from England with the intention of playing, but says taking on the coaching role realises a long-time ambition.
Circumstances changed. I had to review things, and if you look back over the last year and a half, you can see my ambitions towards coaching, what I thought of it. I've had experience with it in Oldham, and as far as I was concerned, I was ready to take the next step in the game.
News of Gardner's sacking came as a shock to one of the club's most recent signings.
I've only just found out, so I'm pretty surprised. I don't really have any sort of comment on that at this stage.
Lindner has been signed for 1 year with a further one-year option. Gardner was offered the chance to coach the reserves, but declined.
To tennis, and Wally Masur has failed to find the form that took him to the semi-finals of the US Open last year. The Australian was bundled out in his first round match, going down to American David Witt in 4 sets. World number 1 Pete Sampras had no trouble dispensing with South Africa's Kevin Ulliott. And in the women's singles, Arantxa Sanchez Vicario of Spain has advanced to the 3rd round, defeating France's Natalie Tauzier.
It was billed as a classic David and Goliath confrontation, the 206th seed meeting the world's number 1. But Sampras wasn't about to show any mercy and broke the South African serve twice in the first set to lead 4 games to love. 2 sets down, Elliott produced some courageous network in the closing stages. But Sampras kept hitting the mark to easily advance into the 2nd round. In the women's, Arantxa Sanchez Vicario was forced to a tiebreaker in the 2nd set. And although Tauzier had her chances, the Spaniard just wouldn't relent and notched up another win. In a 3-set thriller, Fernandez overcame Fendick to stay in the Open. She hadn't volleyed for the entire match, then produced these textbook shots to win a tight tiebreaker.
She does it again! She comes good when it matters most.
Now let's see if we have any good weather news. Here's Jenny Woodward.
Thanks, Rod. Well, most of the state's been fine today. There were just a few lingering showers about the southeast corner and some isolated showers along the north tropical coast. This afternoon's highest maximum 33 degrees at Normanton and Camberwell. The average temperatures have moved up today with the start of a new month, and today's figures were a little below in coastal parts, but warmer in the west in the northerly winds. Birdsville on 31 was 4 degrees above average, and the lowest minimum was 4 degrees at several places, including Roma and Oakey. Well, there were plenty of overnight rain totals from southeast districts, with widespread moderate falls from the coast to the ranges and a few light sprinkles further west. Also some good totals in the tropics. Up to 9 a.m, the highest report 31 millimetres at Mount Joseph, 27 at Kilkeven and 24 at Wallaville, while the Enoggera Reservoir here in Brisbane had 19 millimetres. The biggest total in the north was 37 at Topaz. A look at the satellite photo taken at 4 this afternoon, and you can see the cloud along the coastal fringe, and there's also a big frontal system to the south. Onto the chart, and the high has a couple of centres, and it's bringing moist southeasterly winds into coastal parts. Inland, the winds turn warmer northeasterly ahead of that low further west. The cold pool that was over the southeast is moving away, and conditions became much more stable during the day. Tomorrow's weather will be much the same as the systems are moving slowly. There'll be a few showers on the south coast, but mainly in the Fraser Island area. Otherwise, showers will be confined to the tropics with the chance of a few falls about the southern Gulf. Inland parts will be fine and warmer. So to interstate cities for tomorrow, and mainly fine across the country, just a few showers expected in Perth. To forecast now for northern Queensland, isolated showers along most of the east coast and ranges and a few afternoon showers on the peninsula. Winds will be moderate to fresh southeast to easterlies. Western Queensland should be fine and warmer with light to moderate north to northeasterly winds. For central Queensland, mostly fine with only very isolated showers along the coast and islands, moderate to fresh southeasterlies along the coast, turning lighter northeasterly through the inland. Southeast districts, a few showers about the islands and coast south from Maryborough, and also developing later in the day tomorrow about inland parts of the Wide Bay and Burnett districts. Fine elsewhere and light to moderate southeast to northeasterly winds. Regional centres all expecting a fine day tomorrow, a top of 24 degrees at Bundaberg and Gundawindi. Brisbane should be fine with light to moderate southeast to northeasterly winds, and the 3-day outlook is for the fine weather to continue. On the bay, southeast to northeasterlies at 10 knots, highest seas less than a metre, and lighter southwest to southerlies overnight. And today in South Coast districts, a top of 23 degrees at Amberley. That's all from me for tonight. Now back to you, Rod.
Thanks, Jenny. Before we go, a look back at the day's top stories. After 25 years of armed struggle, the IRA lays down its weapons with renewed hopes of peace for Northern Ireland. Controversial Games boss Arthur Tunstall won't head an Australian mission again. He's been promoted to Secretary of the Games organisation. And the Queensland Government warns councils to clean up their sewage treatment plants, but ratepayers could foot the bill. And that is ABC News. I'll be back later with updates, but now it's time for the 7:30 report. Here's Kathy Jobe.
Thanks, Rod. Ahead tonight, the Goss government, the shredded documents, and one man's relentless pursuit of some answers. Plus, the loneliness of the long-distance sports official, Arthur Tunstall, faces the music. And, coming soon to an outlet near you, alcoholic lemonade, the accidental drink.
Two Dogs, as it's known, is being brewed under licence in 4 states, and it's on tap in more than 100 hotels around the country.
And we're working to at least get 60 to 70,000 cases onto the market before Christmas. We think it's got a very bright future.
Welcome to the program. First tonight, a saga of shredded documents, corruption allegations and a determined whistleblower who won't shut up. In federal parliament yesterday, Queensland Liberal Senator Warwick Perra accused the Goss government of core administrative and political corruption. Senator Perra is part of a select committee which has urged our state government to set up an independent investigation into unresolved whistleblower cases in Queensland. As Caitlin Shea reports, the Senate committee's strong stand has given new hope to the man at the centre of the whole mysterious affair, a former union official called Kevin Lindeberg.
When you're blowing the whistle against government, you're blowing whistle against a Goliath. And it's a David and Goliath battle, and it's not easy to win.
For 4 years now, sacked union official Kevin Lindeberg has been firing stones from his slingshot at the Goss government Goliath. Finally, one stone has hit the mark. A Senate Select Committee into whistleblowing has recommended the Lindeberg case be the subject of an independent investigation because it believes he can't get justice in Queensland.
Well, I'm greatly pleased and vindicated for my 4-year struggle. And it was a unanimous report. That's ALP, Liberal and Greens recommended that.
Mr Lindeberg claims he was sacked after blowing the whistle on the government's shredding of sensitive documents. These related to an inquiry being held into Peter Coyne, the then manager of the John Oxley Youth Centre. Kevin Lindeberg was an official with the Professional Officers Association and in charge of representing Coyne, who'd been accused of misconduct. Coyne and Lindeberg needed access to the files to find out what Coyne had been accused of, and they'd started legal proceedings to get the documents.
Official letters were in the system informing the government of the intention to commence court proceedings, and they had the documents shredded by the State Archivist on the basis that they weren't required. They were the most wanted documents in Queensland when the government went to get them shredded.
Family Services Minister Anne Warner admitted to Parliament the documents had been destroyed, but she said it had been done on advice from the Crown Solicitor. Senate committee member Cheryl Curnow says this is at the heart of the case.
Fundamental question is whether the Crown Solicitor advised the Cabinet to shred public records required in short foreshadowed litigation in order to reduce the risk of legal action against all the parties involved, including the Crown itself. If he did, then he advised the Goss Cabinet on how to commit a prima facie offence of obstructing justice. However, if he didn't, the Goss government is attempting to cover up its own offence behind a smokescreen of non-existent Crown law advice.
The Criminal Justice Commission was called in not once, but twice to investigate the shredding. The second inquiry was headed by Noel Noonan, a former colleague of the Premier and now a magistrate. Kevin Lindeberg says neither of these inquiries delivered any form of justice.
Clearly, when you lay facts before the CJ,